Now we're going to turn and talk to Star Parker. And I know many of you, if you listen to my show, you know we have her on. We're blessed to have her on the first Tuesday of every month. She's the founder of CURE, which is based in Washington, D.C., the Center for Urban Renewal and Education. She is a fabulous spokesperson, actually, for people in inner city communities who are struggling, need to get onto the American dream, into the American dream, back on path in America. And she does tremendous things around the country, speaking to organizations of all kinds, inspiring people in minority communities in America to think that they have a potential, a future, a path in this country. So I bet you, actually, I didn't tell her this, but as long as we have her on the phone, I'm going to ask her what she thinks about this. Has she been able to hear this conversation? She has, okay. What she thinks about this program in Central Missouri Prison. So, hello, Star.
Hi, it's good to be back with you. And hopefully this week you can hear me really clearly because I've made the commitment to you, and I'm out and about and had to pull over to the side of the road, so I'm kind of in a noisy place.
Okay. I'm glad to hear you're busy. You do so much good for America. So I'm glad if you're busy, and thanks for pulling over. Okay, so we now have her on the screen. That is Star Parker we're speaking to. So I don't know if you're able to hear the program I was just talking about a moment ago in the first 5. Were you able to hear that segment?
Oh, absolutely. Every word of it.
So what do you think about it?
I think another thumbs up for President Trump, not just because of this particular program, because it may not have anything to do specifically with what he was able to get accomplished through his prison reform and criminal justice reform initiative, but this is what we're hoping will happen a whole lot more all across the country, to where the private sector, the decent people that are in the quiet communities, just serving their God, will start stepping up and doing programs to help those that are the least of these, who may have made a mistake in their life and now they need our help. And so it's very, very encouraging to hear what WashU is doing. It's an incredible school. In fact, I know it very, very well since my son-in-law is from St. Louis, but also the fact that now we have opportunity to see duplications of these types of programs all over the country because of the initiative of this president.
I so love that. And on that subject of what WashU did, I was thinking about how many of us, most of us, have not ever even been to a prison, seen the inside of a prison, imagine life there. All you really can imagine is what you maybe see in movies or television or read in books. But I think that I read about the idea that within prison there's a sense of despondency that settles in. The idea of many people thinking, well, I've just made such a big mistake, whatever it was in my life, that I don't really have a path forward. And the idea that someone's saying to them from this university and other universities, no, you actually can have a path forward. That is just... It's an awe-inspiring and noble motive that school would have, to tell people, no, don't think your life is over, even though you had a pretty big mistake along the way. I love that.
It's exactly what you said in your opening monologue. The people that are in our most distressed zip codes, those that maybe got a bad deal, they didn't pick their lot, that they have a second chance. That's what this is about, that their fate is not their destiny. And there are many in our country who reach into the prisons to help those that are the least of these, that they made a mistake, but they still see the redemptive power of God. Prison Fellowship, actually, that was founded by Chuck Colson, was founded because he went to prison and he understood inside that there's still hope. It's where he found the Lord, and he still knows that everyone in there is redeemable, and we at least need to try. Then they get the choice. So when you have opportunities like this, to where a major university, as you said, it's an incredibly credible university, is saying, let's do a program so that when they come out, they're not only going to have an option to return to their former community, but they're going to have an option to say, I've got a resume now. I've got a resume line.
Yep.
I've studied, and so now I can be mobile and move about the country and maybe get something that will build that next level and that next season of my life. So it's important. And I want to reiterate one more other thing about the President's initiative that was passed into law about a year or so ago. This criminal justice reform initiative, it allows for many, many more nonprofits to say, you know what, let's get involved. Because now what we can do is say, when you get arrested, when you now get sentenced, you get an opportunity, especially if you're young, to track yourself. If you say, I want this track, I want a track so I can learn how to behave, then you'll go to that track. And on that track, you get more educational opportunities, you get closer to your home so your family can come visit you. But if you're hardened and say, I don't care, I don't want to be learning, then you're going to get the other track. So I'm very, very pleased with you bringing this story to the forefront, because there is good news in our country, not just for those that can redeem themselves, but also the fact that there are so many in our community and so many in our society that really want to help others, including those that wash you.
Absolutely. Well said. Okay, well, now I want to turn, Star, to your column. You have this column that you're just a tremendous writer and always zero in on issues facing America. The most recent column, Lisa, I know of that you had is about a female student at a university who formed the YAF, the Young America Foundation branch or whatever group at her university, and it's called University of Northwestern. It's in St. Paul, Minnesota, but she got YAF going, which is a great Young America's Foundation. I've spoken at YAF groups. They're just fabulous groups on college campuses. And then she invited you to speak. I just can't imagine a more stellar speaker to come. And I guess I want you to share with the listeners what happened when, after, and this woman's name is Haley, and I'm hoping you help me with the last name, Chetter.
Yeah.
Chetter.
Yep. So most of the letters are silent, but yes, Chetter.
Okay.
And you know what's interesting? In fact, I just introduced it to the world yesterday on Fox and Friends, because what's interesting about this story, it's a small Christian school, and it's a private school, so they get to decide who they want. I'm a firm believer in free markets and free associations. But what happened here needed public attention, because she opened a club. They approved it. It's a YAF club. YAF, for people who are not familiar, are the owners of the Reagan Ranch. And what they do is they train leaders for tomorrow. They train these university students that are having difficulties on their college to get that other worldview, that other discussion going. So YAF now expands into colleges to allow a place of dialogue about issues that we're talking about at the kitchen table anywhere. You're seeing on the news every day. It's political, it's policy, it's everything about culture and society. And so this young woman, being raised in a Christian home, Christian conservative home, chose a college that she thought was consistent with her worldview. Well, she got there and found out they had a little more liberal bent to themselves than her liking, so she opened a YAF chapter. They approved the YAF chapter, a little bit of club, then they invite me. They invite me, and all of a sudden I'm too radical, I'm too extreme for their community. It almost sounds like they're a cult or something. So all of a sudden they're not only yanking the opportunity for me to come and just share with the students on abortion. That was the topic. It was on abortion, pro-life. It was a Christian little school. And not only did they do that, they went after the student. When this first happened, I stayed out of the discussion because, hey, that's their choice. But now, 2 weeks ago, I found out that they were going after the student. That's why I wrote my nationally syndicated column about it, because they're marginalizing her. They're trying to shut down her little club. I've been looking and thinking about her future as a young woman who, at her college, this is her experience. Who knows where she'll be able to mobilize and work later in life. So I stepped into the discussion because I think if the Christian community itself is not going to dialogue with our young people about issues that everybody else is talking about, they're on the front page of the paper, then who will? Who will help them shape their ideas so that they can combat this secular cultural war that we're in as a Christian community of people?
Absolutely. And for our listeners, this school, again, is called University of Northwestern. It's in St. Paul. It's a Christian school. So Star Parker, who's on the line with us, often speaks to conservative groups of all kinds, frequently addresses the subject of abortion and the valuing of life, and it's just a very eloquent both testimony and presentation about it. But the school's response to this once they realized that this young woman had invited Star Parker to speak, the school's response said, "We really don't bring speakers who radically hold beliefs that UNW as a whole would not agree with." So they're saying a Christian school, number one, wouldn't agree with the pro-life view, but number two, wouldn't agree with the idea that the pro-life message could at least be offered and shared on campus, even if you're going to have kids raise their hand, protest, argue, bring a pro-choice speaker. They're saying you can't, this is so radical that someone's going to speak up for life that you can't even have her come here. I mean, you expect that from like Berkeley, but this is from, go ahead.
It's interesting, and that you would even mention Berkeley. I've been lecturing for Young America Foundation, YAF.org, for 25 years. I've been on Berkeley for them more than once. I've been at Wells Wellesley. Wells is really interesting. It's the sister school of Wellesley, which is Hillary Clinton's school, and it's like 80% lesbian up there. I've been at Emory. I've been at University of Pennsylvania, where they have real issues. I mean, I've been over 250 campuses in this country in the last 20-something years. So it caught us a little off guard to say that knowing what we know today with the discussions that we're having in our culture, everything from 68 million children being slaughtered in the womb, and now Democrats promoting infanticide, all the way to the definition of marriage has changed to where we're having discussions about gender identification with 5-year-olds as they go into school. With all of these cultural issues on the table, for a Christian university to say, we don't even want to talk about it, just put our heads in the sand. Yeah, I offered even the administration, I said, look, if you think I'm a little polemic, that's understandable. I could be brash a little time. Then let's just do it as a discussion. Let's do it as a debate. You can bring in a panel. It doesn't matter to me. But 1 week out, canceling the event and then trying to pretend that it was because she didn't dot certain I's and cross certain T's, that it was all about how she applied for me to come. Come on, this is disingenuous. There's no need of us lying about it. The email speaks for itself, that they thought that this is too extreme. We don't want to be bothered. And so what I did in my column is said, we had this opportunity in society once before. It's called Jim Crow. Black codes and segregation did not happen in a vacuum. When 4 million former slaves were released into our society, they went to find freedom, and doors started shutting. And there were decent people that were just sitting there quiet and just hoped it went away. Just please go away, including the church. They just shut the door on all of that discussion during that time, which allowed the KKK to grow to 6 million members and lynching after lynching, to where by the time the dust settled, we had over 3,000 lynchings in this country in that very short period of time and needed a civil rights movement. So now God has given us another opportunity to go around that same hill. And I think that this particular school missed this opportunity by saying, we'd rather bury our heads in the sand.
They sure did. 2 other points you make in your column. And again, we're speaking to Star Parker, and you can find her online at urbancure.org, and also on Twitter at urbancure. But Star, I love another point you made in your column, which is what you were alluding to in your last remarks, which is the famous quote from Edmund Burke, which is essentially, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. It is so easy to be silenced, to just salute to the politically correct if they are belligerent. They characterize conservative views as either extreme or intolerant or something, but this school was characterizing you as extreme. It's easy to just shut up, and this is not a time in our country when you can have people just surrender to this kind of pressure. So I love that you're speaking up for this young woman. I love that, and I love the stories that you share when you do speaking on campus. You mentioned in the column that about the other times in which in our right now examples in our culture where Christian people are trying to speak up, and they are in one way or another being silenced by the government. I don't want to go off on those stories today, but this is not an isolated incident. This is an ongoing attitude.
That's why we need more of them to push in. They're not alone. That's why this Christian school let society down and let their Christian community down by not opening the door to discussion. And we're seeing it more and more. People are being intimidated. They're losing their jobs as individuals, but the church won't speak out and defend them. We have to remind ourselves 100 million Americans still get up and go to church on Sunday morning. These are people that take it seriously. Otherwise, why would they get up and go to church on Sunday morning when you have 200 million that don't? So they at least need some insight. They at least need some direction. I know too many people now personally where their kids are going to these universities and coming back liberals. And this is why. Because they did not learn Christian apologetics. Because they did not have their school mindful enough to say, we've got to expose them to these harder truths, even if they make us uncomfortable.
Absolutely the case. I want to turn to, you had another column recently, and I want a quick turn to that on the subject of abortion laws in our country, Alabama and Georgia having new abortion laws on the books. But one point you're making in this column is that it's not just a particular issue about abortion, but is it tying it to the idea of the feel of protecting life, the sense of having a society committed to protecting life. It causes us to feel like we're part of something larger than ourselves, that we're part of a community, of a country, of a Christian nation. And in particular, you went off in this column talking about the connection or the factual observation that we are seeing in America a reduction in the number of people getting married, the percent of young people married. We're seeing a reduction in the number of children being born. We are not replacing ourselves. Our birth rate is going down. And you were tying that to our acceptance of abortion. And I wonder if you can just talk about that a little bit, like how you see the prevalence of abortion tied to not getting married and people not having children.
You know, the Bible says that if the foundations are destroyed, what will the righteous do? Yeah. What we've done is we've destroyed the very foundation of humanity with abortion law. We have said that we do not believe in Creator God that tells us that we are uniquely formed in the womb. And by allowing for that spirit of I guess you could just say anti-life and anti-humanity to get into our culture for a couple of generations now, we have people making decisions based on that. So we have millennials, for instance, basing their family life on the fact that it's disposable, that we can calculate these things ourselves, that we can plan out to the point that we can either decide to have children or not. It's just all a matter of choice. They lose sight of the fact that choice loses its meaning if it doesn't matter what we choose. So they're now choosing not to marry. They're choosing not to have too many children because they are being indoctrinated through an environmental messaging that says that, you know, children are environmental hazards. Don't have too many.
Yeah.
Planned Parenthood is now even sending out messages that, you know, your chances of dying in childbirth are bigger than your chances of dying in abortion, you know, and all of this messaging, and they're not being countered in our society, including at some of the Christian universities. So we've got a whole generation that has bought into this mindset that life is just about me. It's about me and materialism. And children get in the way of that. Children are very humbling. Little dogs love you. Children mock you, frankly. And so when the choices are made and they're left up to mankind, they're choosing now not to birth and not to marry.
You know, many people have commented about this, about America's birth rate going down. And we're watching, actually, Europe is ahead of us on that. Western Europe has had the birth rate declining really for a longer period of time than we have in numbers. And then you're watching is that the whole culture loses a sense of vibrancy and a sense of expectation of good in the future, expectation of the next generation, of joy in the next generation, and the expectation of life going forward. It's a dark sense about society that we're so not joyful and looking forward to life and marriage and the next generation that life. What descends is a sense of meaningless about life.
That's exactly right. And anyone that's traveled through Europe, wherever you go in any country, as everyone says, oh, but they're still wonderful. No, they're like zombies. One of the things that most foreigners comment most about Americans is that we are happy, that we are joyful. Why? Because we have choice, we have freedom, and it allows us to make mistakes. It allows us to just, keep moving forward. But you don't have that sense anywhere in Europe, and they are not duplicating themselves, and that's why they also have an illegal immigration problem that they're in transition. And some of the countries that are trying to get ahead of it, that have been socialists for generations, atheists and socialists at the same time, are now starting to revisit their faith, their original Christianity, and they're also starting to revisit capitalism and say maybe this stuff doesn't work. The smaller, it doesn't get a whole lot of news, but they are starting to rethink this because they know themselves that they're on a path to self-destruction. It's not just about duplication of yourself, but it's also exactly what you said, Deb. It's about life. It's about having fun in life. It's about creating as God created us. And you don't find that in most of those European countries because they've removed themselves from that fundamental principle of life that should be protected from womb to tomb. Life should be protected.
Very well said, Star Parker. Would you tell our listeners, I mentioned your website. You have also you on Twitter at Urban Cure, your website, urbancure.org. This is an organization, folks, if you want to find someone, you can hear it in Star Parker's voice, who is on fire to inspire people in our country to re-embrace the value of life, re-embrace what America is all about. She brings a message to inner cities, especially about the idea that the American dream is alive and well, and you got to stay in school and finish school and don't get married till you, wait till you are married to have kids. All these intact families, all of the messages that this generation has missed out on. Star Parker is just a force of nature, bringing those messages to Americans' inner city community. So, Star, anyone last words about your website or what your latest projects? Actually, you have a new book coming out. Mention that.
I do have a new book coming out, Necessary Noise, in September. But we also, how we reach into the inner cities is through our clergy program. And so we have a clergy summit coming up in September where we bring clergymen that serve in these hard-hit zip codes to Washington, D.C. for 3 days of regular diet in this information. So anyone that wants to sponsor a pastor, we would love for that person to go to urbancure.org, urbancure.org, urbancure.org. They can find me through Star Parker as well, starparker.com. They're going to find me. But those are our two big projects right now. It's preparing for my book, which will then launch my news talk show every week, but the major project is making sure that we double our numbers from last year of these clergy that come to Washington. So we're looking for 200 pastors to come and be in Washington, D.C. With us this September.
Star, it is always just a great pleasure to talk with you. Thanks so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. I'll see you next month.
Next time. Okay.
Yep.
Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So that, my friends, is Star Parker. She is a fabulous, force of nature, just an outspoken, relentless defender of not just life, but of the idea of family, of community, of the need for America to put in place good programs that bring strong public education to the inner city so kids have a potential and a possibility for bursting onto the American scene, joining the American dream. She's just a wonderful patriot, and I love having her on every first Tuesday of the month.